Marijuana is kind of a hybrid. It has some features that are like LSD. It also doesn't produce physical dependence, and it doesn't produce overdose deaths. And the fact that it doesn't do those two things makes it seem like it's not, quote, an addictive drug. It has an appeal to people who are smart and who are interested in going beyond the conventional boundaries of their behavior.
33 years after the Marijuana Tax Act, its constitutionality was questioned in the Supreme Court. The man who led the charge to change the law was the man who told a generation to tune in, turn on, and drop out. Timothy Leary.
Timothy Leary, the LSD guru, argued that in order to get the license, one had to break the law. In other words, one had to have the marijuana before you got the license, and therefore you were already in violation of the law, and therefore getting the license was simply self-incrimination. The Supreme Court agreed with him and overturned the law.
In the slam of a gavel, the federal law that banned marijuana vanished. Until 1914, most people believed the Constitution upheld one's right to ingest any substance one wanted. Besides, a drug that made you feel better was perceived as good. But by 1970, recreational drug use was perceived as bad, and Congress didn't consider the right to use drugs a right protected by the Constitution, and banned marijuana in the Controlled Substance Act of 1970.
A lot of people became concerned with drugs for the first time in the 60s because the young people were using them with such seeming freedom and recklessness. They were particularly concerned about marijuana.
The new federal law is on firm constitutional ground, unlike the self-incriminating tax of 1937. But still, marijuana use does not end. It just becomes illegal and finds a place in a subculture of its own that includes a comedy troupe and a magazine. Unlike pot, methamphetamine is not completely illegal. It can still be prescribed by doctors, but illegal, non-medicinal use is at an all-time high.
It's estimated that by 1971, so many amphetamine pills were produced illicitly that there were, if you gave them to every man, woman, and child in the country, you would give them 50 apiece.
Methamphetamine is banned for non-medicinal use. Still, it is manufactured illegally in all 50 states. Missouri and Utah can claim the dubious prize as meth lab capitals of the U.S. Naively and innocently put on the market as the Benzedrine inhaler almost 70 years ago, no one could predict amphetamine's damage.
People who used a lot of amphetamines tended to be trigger happy about violence. First of all, they become a little paranoid and they misinterpret something and think that that person is out to do them harm, and they, give them a punch or worse.
Amphetamines are also the preferred drug of the sports world. Pro football, horse racing, and bicycle racing are breeding grounds for speed abuse. While racing the Tour de France, Tommy Simpson collapses and dies under the influence of methamphetamine.
Speed kills by blowing your heart up. It actually can blow your heart up. I mean, the heart muscle, you'll get it to rip a hole in itself. The messages that are being sent by the brain are just completely out of whack.
Recreational use of this addictive drug ruins thousands of lives. Despite its dangers, its powers of addiction claim new addicts every day.
That first shot of speed was like having an orgasm. I didn't have to have a man. I didn't have to have anybody. I just stood there and backed up and sat down on the couch, and it was unbelievable. And it was a rush, a high that I knew I had found what I was looking for my whole life. And I was off and running.
While amphetamines have long been prescribed by doctors, medicinal marijuana has only gained acceptance in the 90s. Today, it is used by AIDS and cancer patients to stimulate appetite and reduce the nausea from chemotherapy. It's also a treatment for glaucoma. The attitude of the American public towards marijuana is most fickle. Once, the federal government was opposed to a national marijuana law, but enacted one anyway in 1937, only to see it overturned 30 years later by the Supreme Court. In 1970, a new federal law banned marijuana again, citing it was of no medicinal use. But today, marijuana is used legally for that very reason. Now, at the turn of the 21st century, 11 states have decriminalized possession of small amounts of marijuana, judging the legal side effects to be more harmful than the drug itself.